Solomon's Temple, a magnificent structure in ancient Jerusalem, stood for nearly 400 years as the city's crown jewel and the heart of worship for the Lord. This sacred edifice was not only a testament to divine grandeur but also a central element in almost half of the Old Testament events. Its location, history, and intricate design hold profound significance, enhancing our reverence for one of the holiest places in the world. Jerusalem itself is nestled among three major valleys, the Hinnom, Tyropoeon, and Kidron, which frame the city's landscape. Mount Moriah, the ridge between the Central and Kidron valleys, is crowned by a large flat rock, now beneath the dome of the rock. According to Genesis 22 verse 2, this is the region where Abraham was commanded to sacrifice Isaac, thus linking the Temple Mount to this pivotal biblical event. Under King David's reign, Jerusalem was a small city controlled by the Jebusites, occupying the southern part of the Central Ridge. Around 1000 BC, David captured the city and made it his capital, bringing the Ark of the Covenant there and planning for a permanent temple to replace the portable tabernacle of Moses. To expand the city, David purchased the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, situated on a higher hill ideal for the temple of the Lord. Construction of the temple began under David's son, Solomon, and after 7 years, around 960 BC, the temple was completed, likely over the prominent rock of Mount Moriah. Solomon also built a new palace and extended the city walls, expanding Jerusalem toward the peak of Mount Moriah. Modeled after the tabernacle of Moses, Solomon's temple embodied the spiritual journey of Israel, symbolically retracing the steps back to God's presence, a theme rooted in the Garden of Eden. Solomon's temple stood in Jerusalem for nearly 400 years, serving as the pinnacle of the city and the focal point of worship for the Lord. Almost half of the Old Testament events occurred during the era when Solomon's temple existed. Recognizing the importance of its location, history, and architecture can significantly enhance one's reverence for one of the most sacred places on earth. Jerusalem is situated in a region marked by three major valleys, the Hinnom, the Central or Tyropoeon, and the Kidron valleys. The mountain range between the Central and Kidron valleys is known as Mount Moriah. At the summit of this mountain is a prominent flat rock, now beneath the dome of the rock. According to Genesis 22 verse 2, Abraham was instructed to sacrifice Isaac in the region of Moriah, linking the Temple Mount with this pivotal event. In King David's time, Jerusalem was under the control of the Jebusites, with the city occupying only the southern part of the Central Ridge. Around 1000 BC, David captured Jerusalem, making it his capital. He brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem and began preparations for constructing a permanent temple to replace the portable tabernacle of Moses, used for over 400 years. As the ancient city of Jerusalem was quite small, David purchased Araunah the Jebusite's threshing floor to expand the city. Being higher than the city of David, this hilltop was an ideal site for the temple of the Lord. Construction of the temple began under David's son, King Solomon, and after 7 years, around 960 BC, Solomon completed the temple, likely over the same prominent rock of Mount Moriah. Solomon also built a new palace south of the temple and extended the city walls towards Mount Moriah's peak. The Temple of Solomon was designed based on the Tabernacle of Moses. Due to many similarities between the Tabernacle and the Garden of Eden, many scholars believe that the Garden of Eden was the prototype for the Tabernacle and subsequent temples. Jewish tradition suggests that Eden was located on a hill, with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil at its center. The Bible narrates that after Adam and Eve sinned by eating the forbidden fruit, they were expelled towards the east, and cherubim with a flaming sword guarded the east entrance to prevent access to the tree of life. To return to God's presence, Israel had to symbolically retrace Adam and Eve's steps westward. The tabernacle was set up in an east-to-west direction, mirroring the Garden of Eden. It was divided into three main areas: the outer court, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. The outer court represented the fallen world, while the inner courts symbolized a holier way of life. As the high priest, representing all of Israel, moved through the tabernacle or temple, he transitioned from the world into a more sacred state, eventually entering the Lord's presence by passing cherubim embroidered on the veil. Solomon's temple followed this three-tiered progression, doubling the floor plan size of the tabernacle sanctuary. Approaching Solomon's temple, the first feature was the brazen altar of sacrifice, measuring 20 cubits long and wide, and 10 cubits high, a cubit being about 1.5 feet. 4 horns, symbolizing power, were on the altar's corners, where sacrificial animals were burned, foreshadowing the future sacrifice of Jesus Christ. On the southeast side of the temple was the molten or brazen sea, supported by 12 oxen, representing strength and the 12 tribes of Israel. Water from the larger brazen sea was distributed to 10 bronze water basins for various priestly washing and cleaning rituals. The temple had 3 floors of chambers or storage rooms around its south, west, and north sides. The inner walls were stepped to support the floor's timbers. Access to the storage rooms was through a door on the temple's south side, with wooden ladders connecting each floor. 2 large bronze pillars, named Boaz and Jachin, stood at the temple's front porch, adorned with lily flower petals and pomegranates, symbolizing prosperity and posterity. The main temple doors, made of large bifolding panels covered in gold with cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, had a fourth part of the wall doorframe, interpreted by scholars as having 4-step frames. The inner doorway to the Holy of Holies had 5 frames. Only the priests could enter the inner temple, representing Israel. Upon entering, one would be in the holy place, a room 40 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 30 cubits tall, overlaid with gold and decorated with cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, reminiscent of the Garden of Eden. 10 large menorahs, 5 on each side, constantly lit the room, which had narrow windows at the top. The table of showbread, with 12 large flat loaves, was on the room's right side. The priests replaced the showbread every Sabbath, akin to the weekly communion bread. Sharing bread in ancient times symbolized peace, brotherhood, love, and forgiveness. In front of the Holy of Holies was the altar of incense, similar in shape to the altar of sacrifice but burning sweet incense instead of animal flesh. The incense represented the prayers of the saints ascending to God, reminding that our lives and actions must be pleasing to the Lord. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, and only on the Day of Atonement. He passed through a beautifully embroidered veil with cherubim, who symbolically guarded God's dwelling place. Inside the Holy of Holies, a perfect cube 20 cubits on each side, the walls were overlaid with gold and decorated with cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. 2 large cherubim flanked the Ark of the Covenant, their wings spanning the room. This room represented where the Lord's presence dwelled and the ultimate goal for all Israel. Solomon's temple was not just a city landmark but the Lord's dwelling place. Its design illustrated Israel's journey back into God's presence, teaching that only through the Messiah's infinite sacrifice could they return to the Lord, a sacrifice that would occur nearby on a cross.